All right, buddy. This is Gerald Orlees. I'm a functional nutrition consultant. Today, we're going to talk about testing, all about labs. And we have a saying among clinicians, if you're not testing, you're just guessing. And of course, clinically in our office, we do use some multiple systems of muscle response testing to really identify what the root causes to a person's health issues. But we also love to incorporate lab work because it helps us stay objective in terms of showing actual third-party positive results. So clinically, we ultimately want our patients to be feeling better. We want their symptoms to disappear, but we have to go in and identify what are the barriers that are preventing them from healing, and then what organs are not functioning optimally. Now, many of you know that I already lecture across the country and I deliver multiple seminars. One of the seminars I deliver is called the Functional Blood Chemistry Seminar, where I teach natural health care practitioners on how to identify what's going on basically with patients from from blood work. I also have another seminar. It's called the Nutritional Solutions for a Thyroid Fatigued World. And there are many other seminars in which I teach clinicians on how to use specific labs. Now, there is a variety of lab work that can be ordered. And most of the issues that we have clients come in with is oftentimes they'll say that their medical doctor says their lab work is normal, but they still feel unwell. And what does that mean? That's usually due to a problem where the clinician, unfortunately, is looking for pathology and not looking to optimize physiology. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so let's back up. Pathophysiology. What is pathology? It is disease. So technically, I am not here to diagnose, assess diseases. I am focused on making sure that the individual is operating at their highest self. So we're going to be looking at optimizing a patient's physiology, and the physiology is basically the function of an organ. So we know we have the liver, we have the thyroid, we have the brain, we have the heart, the spleen, the ovaries, the uterus, the prostate. What we want to do is make sure that each of these organs is operating at the optimal level, okay? And so most clinicians, most conventional medical doctors, unfortunately, are only diagnosing, or they're actually ordering labs to see if they can find something wrong. And that's the reason why when people come in and they bring in their lab work to us, we can analyze the lab work and we can actually see areas in which the physiology, okay, the function of the organs are slightly off or not at ideal. And that's where we can take actions with natural solutions. And most conventional medical doctors, when they see someone's blood markers starting to go towards out of range, not quite yet out of range, but towards out of range, they will even make a comment to their patients to say, hey, we'll check back in a couple of years. If it continues to get worse, then we can do something. And of course, many of you who are watching this recording know that if your health is declining on a steady path and you don't do anything now, it may lead to a worse situation. And so you're here to make a positive change so that you can take action now to get back to your highest self, your optimal physiological self is how we can describe it. So there are a couple labs here. You can get my list, a couple labs that we do order in our clinic. And again, with muscle response testing, we can find so much information, and we can bring in some third-party objective tests as well to corroborate our successes and what patients are experiencing under the care of functional nutrition and herbology. So the first test that we do order is blood work, okay? And we can order blood work. You can bring in your blood work from any other clinician in the past, and we may find a couple things. We may find things that they cannot assess because they're looking for pathology and not to optimize physiology. There is also the other aspect that they may have incomplete labs. Many of our patients will come in with lab work that's very incomplete. I'll give you an example. A patient goes in and gets thyroid labs ordered, and all they come back with is TSH. TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is not even produced by the thyroid. It's oftentimes it's perceived as a thyroid hormone, but it's actually a pituitary hormone that is sent. So the TSH is sent from the pituitary to the thyroid, and then the thyroid is then signaled to produce T4 or thyroxine. And so oftentimes I see people just only with a TSH, and that is not a true indicator of what is going on with the liver. Furthermore, people then will get a T4 with a TSH, but then we don't look at the T4 and the T3 conversion. So there's other hormones that are related to the thyroid that needs to be ordered to figure out, is it a thyroid problem or is it a liver problem? And most of the thyroid cases that I work with, oftentimes we find that their liver is a little sluggish. Okay, and how would you know symptomatically if you have a sluggish liver? Well, maybe there's some belching, burping, slow bowel movements, maybe there's some constipation or the reverse diarrhea. There might be gallbladder issues, so a history of gallbladder pains or spasms. If someone has skin issues, their livers has an inability to thoroughly throw out toxins that are inside the body to the outside of the body, and some of these toxins rise to the outside of the skin, and now the person has itchy skin or symptoms like acne, psoriasis, eczema, etc. So it's really important when we look at hormones, we're not just doing a TSH or just a TSH and T4, but we want the whole picture. So blood work, we're looking at the entire thyroid axis. We're looking at hydration. We can actually see if someone has some acute or chronic dehydration. We're going to look at the health of the red blood cells. Is someone anemic, and what type of anemia? Is it just an iron deficiency anemia, or B complex deficiency, or vitamin C or copper deficiency anemia? So there's different patterns that we can identify. There's vitamin B12 deficiency anemia, also known as pernicious anemia. So we're going to be looking at the nutritional status of the blood. Then we're also looking at, is there any systemic inflammation? So we're looking at fibrinogen, homocysteine, as well as platelets. Sometimes we'll look at lipoprotein A. So is there any systemic inflammation? And of course, we're looking at cholesterol levels. We're going to look at kidney markers, liver markers. In men, we're going to look at the prostate markers. And there's quite a lot that's covered in blood work. Okay, now the next test that we do use, now I'll make a mention too, we do measure hormones in the blood. However, keep in mind that a blood test to measure hormones is only telling you what's available. It doesn't really tell you what's working in the tissues. And that's where we go into saliva testing. And saliva tests that we use specifically actually measure not only the hormones, such as the reproductive hormones. We know the estrogen, progesterone, we have testosterone, there's pregnenolone and cortisol. We know about all of those, but there's also the pituitary hormones. So luteinizing hormone, follicular stimulating hormone, because we want to identify where is the weakness within the endocrine system. Is it the downstream glands, such as the gonads or the ovaries, the testicles, or even the adrenal glands, or is it upper endocrine hormone glands support needed up here, right? Or the pituitary, or is it the hypothalamus right in the middle of the brain? Because if we can pinpoint exactly where the problem is, then we can handle it at the root level. So we do use saliva tests for that purpose. And I'll show you here right now, there's a great diagram that actually combines, we can actually share with you why you need to understand both saliva and why you want to understand let me see if I can do this. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is a diagram, and this is from one of the presentations that I deliver nationally. But the steroid hormones they come from cholesterol, and cholesterol is a precursor, meaning you have to have cholesterol. There's a reason why the liver makes cholesterol, and that is because that cholesterol gets transported by the LDLs, the low density lipoproteins. They transport it to the adrenal glands to make all of these other hormones like cortisol. Cortisol helps you get energy, it's anti-inflammatory, it makes sure that you can wake up in the morning to go and work and be with your family and have as much energy as you need during the day. And then it tapers down so you can fall asleep. So the adrenals help with the production of these particular hormones. And then the cholesterol, then while we're sleeping, gets transported into this side. So in women, it's going to convert mostly to the estrogens, and in men to the testosterones. And we're anabolic. These are anabolic steroid hormones that help us rebuild our bodies, build strong muscles, strong bones. And if we don't have enough cholesterol, then we don't have enough potentially progesterone, cortisol, estrogens, or the testosterones, and we start to have hormonal imbalances. So it's very important to have solid blood work done to see what your cholesterol levels are, to see if you have sufficient precursor material to then be transported to your adrenals, and as well as the testicles and the ovaries. And that's where we start to combine both blood work with saliva testing. Okay, so we do saliva testing for measuring and assessing hormones to see if there's any weakness and any imbalances. We also use saliva and stool to understand the gut health. Now, oftentimes individuals come in and they have food sensitivities or food allergies, and we want to figure out which foods are causing each individual specific inflammation in the bowel. So if you have anything like related to irritable bowel syndrome type symptoms, you have this sudden urgency, you have to go to the bathroom at random times during the day, or you just have a lot of inflammation and it's bloated down there, you have a lot of discomfort after a meal, we're going to want to identify what specific foods are actually irritating the gut lining. And so we use saliva as well as stool tests to identify that. We also use some stool tests to identify if there's any pathogens, biotoxins, right? So things such as bacteria, molds, or fungi, or even parasites. And there can be small parasites and big ones. Now, unfortunately, those are not always found in labs. There's a lot of false negatives with the stool tests in regards to the actual identification if there's a parasitic challenge. And so we do combine labs with the muscle response testing to make sure we got all our bases covered. And fortunately, we're able to find quite a bit with our evaluation systems. Okay. The other test that we do have is saliva and urine. And we're going to look that specifically, we can be using those tests to find out if there's any heavy metals that are within your system. So heavy metals that can be really bad for the body and prevent it from healing are heavy metals like lead, mercury, aluminum, arsenic. These are all in our environments, right? They're coming from our water, our air, the food we eat, and also sometimes the applications we apply on our skin. So any lotions or creams can actually transport heavy metals into our bloodstream, and that can be problematic. So we use saliva and urine specifically for that, as well as chemicals. So we have specific tests to see if you have been exposed recently to an extreme amount of chemicals from the environment. And I recently did a particular test and found that I had a lot of jet fuel exhaust in my system, and it was being measured with the metabolites in the urine. So the urine shows what's being excreted, what's being eliminated. And of course, for 2 years, I had been flying every single week from Idaho to California. And thank God I did that test because it confirmed what I suspected. Now, I am thankfully on a lot of a significant amount of liver and kidney detox elimination support. So it was good to have that third-party confirmation to know what I was working with. Okay, we also have the hair mineral tissue analysis. So using the hair, this is a great test for kids as well as pets and animals because it's non-invasive. There's no need to draw out blood. There's no need for a child to try to spit out an extreme amount of saliva so we can measure exactly what's going on in the body. But hair, we can just simply know what the body has been excreting in the most recent 3 months. So we do use hair analysis with children as well as pets, and it actually gives us a lot of information. Is the body excreting or eliminating specific heavy metals? Because this is a detox pathway, and oftentimes we're eliminating certain toxins through our hair. And the hairs also gives us a window to see what's going on inside of the cells. So in terms of the cells, in every cell, you can think of that there's hormones that are trying to get in to stimulate growth or stimulate increased metabolism or something. And hair mineral analysis is a very good representation of what's going on at the cellular level. And so from there, we can actually see if there's some low-grade insensitivity to insulin developing or other hormones such as thyroid hormones. So it is possible to have insulin resistance and to start to gather information from the hair mineral tissue analysis to see if that's starting to develop. Okay, at the same time, we can see extreme fully developed insulin resistance with the blood. So if we see elevated fasting glucose and we see elevated fasting insulin, it means that the insulin is not bringing in the glucose to the cells. That's why they're both elevated in the blood. So we can see a lot of different things, whether we order blood, saliva, urine, or hair tissue mineral analysis. Some other tests that we do run in the clinic are genetic testing. So we're going to look to see if there are any genetic variations that show that a person may have specific predispositions. Now, obviously, we don't believe that if someone shows a high genetic variation and with the possibility for a specific health challenge, that means they're going to get it. So you always want to remember that genetics load the gun, but lifestyle determines whether the trigger gets pulled or not. So we can actually change or minimize or even prevent whatever possibilities that our genes are programmed to tell us that we're going to have down the road by making sure we make the proper lifestyle improvements. Okay, so we also do a genetic test to look at the length of the telomeres. So telomeres are an indicator of what one's lifespan is going to look like. And there are many herbs and nutritional support that can actually extend the length of a telomere, because over time, as individuals age and they get exposed to multiple toxins from their environment, or they consume the standard American diet, a lot of processed foods and sugars and chemicals and pesticides, we see that the telomeres start to shorten. And what we want to do is elongate those. And one great fabulous herb that has been clinically proven to extend the length of telomeres is astragalus. So in Chinese medicine, that's a popular herb, and it helps strengthen the spleen. So anyways, that's just a little tidbit. There are other tests that we can do. There's micronutrient tests. Now, the unfortunate nature about the micronutrient tests is that it's only testing what's in the blood, and it's only testing micronutrients that we humans have discovered. And there's so many nutrients that we have not yet discovered that are still available in the nutrient-dense foods that we have in our diets, especially the diets of those native societies that Weston Apes probably studied. So anyways, I just want to give you a brief overview about specific labs where our focus is to look on how to optimize physiology, not diagnose or identify pathology. Okay. And I do have a lot of clients and patients that come in and they bring in their lab work from other clinicians, and it's all useful. Okay. I never want to poo-poo any of the diagnostics that you've ever had done before, but you can always bring them in, and maybe we find something, maybe we don't. What I do know is that if you're still feeling unwell, there's still something that hasn't been identified. And so you can bring in your existing labs. We can order whatever labs additional to what we've found or discovered during your muscle response testing sessions. And our job is to really help you identify what the root cause to your health challenges are, and to create a designed clinical nutrition program to address those barriers that prevent you from healing. My name is Gerald Orlees, functional nutrition consultant. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime.